Hey, sixth graders. All right, so this week is our last week of learning, of getting new assignments. If you haven't watched the math video, just so you know, then next week you're just going to focus on any missing assignments you have and trying to get all your books back to the school. So with that being said, I wanted to end this online learning thing with an easy story that's easy to follow, and we actually already know the story. It's just a little bit different than the version that we're used to, but I wanted the ending story not to be difficult. So that's why we kind of skipped around, and I ended up choosing this one, which is a folk tale. It's called Yeh-Shen, a Cinderella story from China. It's a Chinese folk tale. So basically you can see that it's pretty much exactly like Cinderella's story. I'm sure most of you, probably all of you, have heard or watched the story of Cinderella and her stepmother and stepsisters and the Prince Charming and all of that. So this story is very, very similar. There's just a couple differences. So if you haven't read the story yet, I need you to pause the video and read it, because otherwise it's not going to make quite much sense. So pause the video and then come back when you're done reading. Okay, so let's just go over it. You all know a Cinderella story is about a girl whose father passes away and she ends up living with her stepmother and stepsisters. Now this story actually only has, I believe, one stepsister. Yes. So a little bit different there, but anyway, they're not nice to her. They make her do all of the chores and all of the cleaning and cooking and everything, and she's just not treated very well. Then one day in our regular version of a Cinderella story, she meets a fairy godmother and she helps her through everything, and then in the end she ends up, marrying the prince. Spoiler alert. But in this story, there isn't a fairy godmother. Actually, there's kind of two things that act as the fairy godmother that we're used to. It's a fish and an old man. Now, the old man kind of shows up. Something happens to her best friend, who is a fish. Now, the fish doesn't have a name. He's a golden fish. He's very pretty, but it's her best friend, and something happens to it involving the stepmother, and then ends up dying, but an old man comes and says, your fish's spirits are still in the bones, so go ask your fish for anything that you need or want, and he will help you get it. So that's kind of in place of the fairy godmother in our usual version. And instead of a ball, it's called a festival in this one, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. It's really easy to read. It's kind of fun to read too. It's very short, so it shouldn't take you long. But anyway, when you are done reading the story, you're going to answer these 6 questions on page 342. You're not going to do these ones. This is the last week, so I didn't want to give you too much work. I really wanted you to focus on getting this done and getting it done correctly. So maybe if you do have some missing work, you can work on that as well. Okay, so let's just go through the questions real quick. So number 1, review lines 1 through 20. What elements of folk tales can you identify in these lines? So we've read a couple folk tales before, and most of you seem to like them and know what identifies them as a folk tale, but just keep in mind that folk tales are stories that have been told and retold for generations. So they probably started back way, way, way before you were born, or even your grandparents were born, and they just keep being told, passed down from generation to generation. And usually they change a little bit, but the idea is still there. Now, some elements that I see in this story that consider it to be a folktale is that it happened a very long time ago, right? So folktales usually, they start out with once upon a time, or in a land far, far away and a long time ago. So this story didn't say that, but you can tell it took place long ago, because it says before the 2 dynasties. So it took place long ago. The characters are humans and a talking magical fish. So that's a little bit unusual, but folktales usually have that unusual character in it. So those are a couple of the elements that I see. You could have seen a couple different ones, but just remember complete sentence on that. Number 2, Reread lines 21 through 34. Describe what happens to the fish and explain why it happens. So this is when Yeh-Shen's stepmother finds out that she is best friends with a fish, and she gets mad, and I'll just help you through it. She tricks Yeh-Shen into leaving her coat. She dresses up as Yeh-Shen in her coat and goes to the pond where the fish is, and she does something very cruel to it. She ends up killing it, right, and then makes it for dinner, which is very, very sad. But why do you think that happens? Tell me, why do you think she does that? Okay, number 3. Review lines 39 through 61. A magic helper, like the old man, is sometimes found in folk tales. How is this magic helper similar to and different from magic helpers in other stories you know? So let's just compare this old man to the magic helper in the Cinderella story we're used to, which is the fairy godmother. Now, they're the same because, they help Yeh-Shen somehow get what she wants. But the difference that I see, you might see another difference. I mean, this is an old man versus a fairy godmother, but the big difference is the old man only helps her once, right? And then he directs her to the fish to seek for help, but the fairy godmother helps her over and over and over again. So that's the difference that I see. You might see something different, but that's okay. All right, number 4. Reread lines 82 through 97. What warning does Yeh-Shen receive from the spirit of the fish? Using this foreshadowing, what might you predict will happen? So in these lines, this is when the fish warns her not to lose her golden shoes. Now, you might already know from the Cinderella story, or that might tell you that Yeh-Shen probably will lose at least one, if not both, of her shoes. So that's pretty much number 4. Okay, number 5. Summarize the events that unfold in lines 139 through 183. How do they lead to the resolution of the story's conflict? So this is basically the part when people start trying on the shoe in the center of the town, and then all the way to the end, basically. That's pretty much these lines. So if you want to summarize that, go ahead and do that in a sentence or two. And then, how do they lead to the resolution of the story's conflict? So how does the end work? What happens in the end? So we all know she marries the prince, and then what happens to her stepmother and stepsister? Basically, she marries the prince, she leaves that cruelty of a cave that she lived in with them, and that's pretty much the resolution. Okay, number 6. What is the theme or message about life of Yeh-Shen, a Cinderella story from China? Explain how the events in the story contribute to the theme. So remember, a theme is an overall message. A theme isn't going to be one word. It's not going to be Cinderella. That's not a theme. A theme is an overall message about life that you can apply in pretty much every situation. There could be several themes. The biggest theme that I see is kindness and loyalty are rewarded. And I see that because Cinderella, or Yeh-Shen, was so kind and loyal to the fish throughout her time with her stepmother and stepsister. And eventually, the fish helped her get away from that, right? The fish helped her immensely with that. So if you're kind and you're loyal to the people around you, then you will be rewarded in the end. That's the theme that I get. You could see something different, which is completely okay. All right, so those are the questions. Went through them pretty quick. Then you have your test. Remember, it's only counted as homework, not a real test. But we'll go through it really quick. Again, I put tips. I put exactly where you can find the answer. It gives you pretty much word for word the answer in the line and the page. So if you don't know the answer, go back and look. This test, I think, is pretty easy if you enjoyed reading the story. All right, number 1, Yeh-Shen's only friend is a fish that she had caught and raised, her stepmother, her stepsister, a very old man. So you can probably cross out 2 of these right away, but if you still don't know, look at line 14 on page 336. 2, Yeh-Shen's stepmother tricks the fish by feeding it the way Yeh-Shen does, asking a neighbor to bring firewood, wearing Yeh-Shen's coat to the pond, making Yeh-Shen call the fish to come out. So you probably remember this, but if you don't, it's on line 29 on page 336, pretty much word for word. Number 3, the old man tells Yeh-Shen that the bones of her fish will always speak to her, are filled with a powerful spirit, can never leave the dung heap, are made of gold. So 2 of these you can probably cross out right away. If you still don't know, look at line 54, page 337. Now remember, you can pause while you're working through this until, like if you want to find number 1, after I read it and give you the hint, then pause, circle the answer, and come back. That would be fine. Okay, number 4. Yeh-Shen runs away from the festival because everyone is making fun of her. The old man warns her to leave. The king and his troops are chasing her, or her stepmother almost recognizes her, or stepsister. This is on line 101 through 102 on page 338, if you don't remember. Yeah, that's the biggest hint that I'll give you on that one. You probably already know it. Okay, line 5. Yeh-Shen tries to find her lost slipper because she wants to A, wear her fancy festival clothes again, B, gain the attention of the king, C, hear the spirit of the bones again, D, ask the old man more of her questions. So this one is probably one of the toughest questions you'll see. The answer is on line 153, page 339, but just remember, she cried all night long when the spirit stopped talking to her. Just keep that in mind as you're answering this question. All right, number 6. When Yeh-Shen puts on the slippers for the king realizes he has found his true love. The bones of her fish refuse to speak to her. Her stepmother and stepsister are happy for her. She floats and rises into the sky like the old man. So you can probably cross out 2 of these if you still don't know. Check out line 176 on page 340. Number 7, Yeh-Shen's stepmother and stepsister come to the palace with Yeh-Shen and the king, make the bones of the fish give them things, go to visit at the palace every year, remain in their cave home. So if you don't know, check out line 181 on page 340. Again, I really don't think you'll have to go back at the book and look at every single one of them. I bet you know most of them. And then you're on to the vocab. Go back through your book if you don't remember these words. It's okay to use your book during this. That is completely okay. Your words are undaunted, glisten, and timid. All right, 11 and 12, 2 sentences, guys, just like we've been doing since August. 11, what are 2 examples of mean treatment that Yeh-Shen receives from her stepmother? So you can probably think of 2, if not more, easily for number 11. 12, what does the king do with a tiny gold slipper when he receives it from the merchant? So tell me what happens after the king gets the gold slipper. What does he do with it? All right, and that is the test. Not too bad at all. Again, email me if you have any questions or need some help. So once you're done with the book questions 1 through 6 and the test, you can take a picture, scan it in, send it to me. Then after that, you have your last spelling book chapter of the year. So you are going to do spelling book chapter 24, pages 180 through 183. Remember, you do not need to do the last 2 pages, 84 through 85. That's on your assignment sheet if you can't remember. But when you're finished with that, take a picture or scan it in and email it to me. And that's your last reading assignment for this whole semester, this whole year. I'm super proud of you guys for continuing to learn through all of this. I know it was not very fun, but you guys did awesome, and you just are great kids to work with. Yeah, but that's it. I hope I get to see you soon. If I don't get to see you, I hope you have a wonderful summer. I really, really miss you guys, but I can't wait to see you next year. All right, take care, guys.